Good morning to all. Welcome to the second part of Java classes and objects. And if just to recall that we have studied about how to declare a class, okay, how to define object of already defined class, okay, and we have seen how to define constructors, okay, and especially the special function that is known as finalize, okay, has been covered in the previous the previous part of the lecture. Okay, in this lecture we'll proceed with more features of Java class and objects. So and we'll begin with the polymorphism concept, and everybody knows that in object oriented programming the polymorph is one of the feature that is supported by any object oriented programming, okay, which is nothing but, okay, having different forms, okay, with the same name, will have a same name with different tasks, you can say, okay, they will have the same appearance but they will perform different tasks, okay. So and it is one of the common way of achieving polymorphism is method overloading. So in Java, two or more methods within the same class, okay, that share the same name is referred as the process of method overloading, okay. We'll see, we have already seen this kind of things in C++, okay. Those who have already gone through C++, they know that this is also the other term we use is function overloading, okay. So method overloading is one among many way to support polymorphism, okay. Now when we have multiple methods, so Java decides which method to call, okay. If suppose there are let's say 5 to 6 methods which are having saying the same name, okay, then Java decide, okay, which method to invoke depending upon the number of argument, okay, and or the type of the arguments, okay. That will help to decide Java to decide which version of the method, okay, which are overloaded are to be called, okay, during the for the method invocation. Now one point we must remember that the return type does not play any role in deciding which method to invoke, okay. So that means the different return types of overloaded methods are insufficient to distinguish two versions of the method. Suppose you have two methods which are having same number of argument with same type, okay, within the same order, but they have different return type. That doesn't make them two, okay, two functions different. That means in the point of method overloading both will be same, okay. And Java simply execute the version of the method whose parameter matches the argument used to call, okay. So it is a match with the actually the arguments which is passed when a method is called, okay. So number of the number of argument must match, and the parameters type, okay, in its respective position should also match. Then the Java is going to invoke that particular method. So here is a simple example. We have taken a class overload, okay, and we have 5 versions of display, okay. So it is here we can say that the display method has been overloaded, okay. We are not doing any important work here, just a display work, but we are distinguishing all of them by passing different parameters, okay. We can see that. So they vary with number of arguments as well as with the type of argument. So let's say this the right hand side part is in the main function, okay. We have created an object obj1 of the overload type, and we call each display one. So when we call display without any argument, so it matches with the first display method. When we pass two integers, we have a method already defined with display two integer, so it matches with the second one. So when the fourth one, so the second method is going to call the fourth display second function call, or the method call will invoke the fourth method of the class. Similarly, only one integer, okay, the second display method takes only one integer, okay. So that is going to invoke by the third method call, and the fourth one passing two doubles, so it is going to invoke the last version of the display method. Now one more thing is possible in Java, okay, that suppose let's say imagine that we have not defined any display method with argument as integer. However, the method call has been performed, okay, call has been done with passing an integer. What Java does in this moment? Okay, definitely we think that there may be an error, but however these cases are handled by the type conversion, okay, automatic type conversion. So promotion, whenever the data type can be promoted to a higher version, which is and we have a method which is accepting a higher level type, a higher size type of okay, which is matching with the invocation type, then we can, the method can be called. Okay, so a promotion can be done, a type conversion with a promotion, okay, to a higher level can be done. In that case, it is going to, it is never going to be an error, it is going to call that particular version. So here the example is that we have a double, okay, so this integer is promoted to the double, okay, so there is a match. So it will try to see whether any higher version of integer is available, because it's a single argument, so it will try to see all the methods that are having single argument and which is having higher version of, higher than the integer. So if it is match, okay, then it will invoke that one. If there is no double, let's say at all, then definitely we are going to have an error, because the Java compiler cannot able to decide which method to invoke on this case, okay, because it doesn't find any suitable matching method, okay, overloaded method to invoke in this case. So similarly, we can also overload the constructors, okay, so we can have constructors with see that we have a parameters, okay, we call parameterized constructor. This is a default constructor, okay, it's another parameterized constructor with single a single argument, okay. So we can overload constructors, and when we create object, depending upon the data available, the initial values available with us, we can invoke the corresponding, we can automatically, decide automatically which version of the constructor is going to be invoked, okay. That is, so here you can see that we have three versions and we are invoking these three versions in the same order by passing the required number of arguments. So when I am passing three arguments, the first, so when my box one is object is created, okay, the constructor with three arguments is invoked, okay, to initialize the all the parameters, okay, all the data fields. Similarly, second, when there is no argument is passed, the second version called and all default values, okay, are assigned, that is -1 in this case. And similar, and third case is a cube, when we can also initialize a cube, right, a box could be a cube size, so all the dimension can be same. So for that is another constructor has been designed. So when we pass single value, all width, height and depth will be assigned to the same value, okay. So third object myCube, when it's created, it is going to invoke the constructor, okay, the last constructor is going to be invoked in this case. Now objects also can be used as a parameter, okay, whenever we need to pass an object, so it can be passed and it will be treated just like we are treating an object inside main function, outside a function, okay. So you can see here in this example, the class test, the equal function which returns a boolean type, okay, is accepting one object of the same class type, that is the object name is O. Alright, so here object O is passed as an argument, that's why it is treated as treated as an outside object, okay. And any field you want to refer for this object O, we can use dot operator to access all these fields, okay. So here you can see that we are comparing the value of the fields of O with the object which has invoked this equal method, okay. So here A refers to the A and B refers to the fields of the object which has invoked this equal method, and O dot A, O dot B refer to the A and B field of the object O. Okay, this is about object as parameter, okay. We can similarly pass objects to the constructors, all right. So we know that here there is no explicit concept like copy constructor in Java, but we can copy an object when we initialize an object, okay, or we create an object and we need to initialize it, we can copy the value. That can be done here, okay. So creating a clone of that, all right, creating a actually, because we are invoking here by new operator, okay. You can see the second one, the second object, my clone, is new box, and instead of any other primitive type argument, it is taking the argument of box type. So it indicates that we can also pass object to the constructors. Okay, so here the objective is that you can use it, or here the objective is to create a clone. So we are copying all the field from ob dot width, ob dot height, ob dot depth to the width, height and depth of the object which is getting created. So to the my clone. So my clone and my box one will have the same values. That doesn't mean that they are referring to the same object. Okay, they are different objects, because we are using two new operators to create two objects. Okay, their values will be same. So it is a clone. Also, we can pass as an object to the constructor to use the values. Okay, not necessarily we always copy it, we can also use them too. So mostly when we want to copy, we pass an object as an argument to the constructors. So we have seen, okay, we can pass objects, we can pass primitive type. Now Java doesn't support pointers concept. We don't believe in the concept of pointers, but Java still has the concept of pass by value, pass by reference, okay, or call by value or call by reference. All right. So it's Java's way to decide which will be called by reference, which will be called by value. Okay. So when we pass primitive types, including int, double, float, long, all type, then it becomes pass by value. That means when we pass a primitive type, a copy of that value is created. Okay, in the method which is been called. Okay, but when we pass an object, doesn't matter which type of object, it is passed effectively by call by reference. Okay, that let me here explain why. Okay, so the parameter that receives a reference to an object will be referred. Okay, because always, as we discussed, always an object is created by, okay, means the object is created in the memory by using new operator. Okay, so when we pass an argument, okay, we are passing an object, but we in the called method, we are not using new to create an object and store this value. Okay, which is generally copied in our C or C++. Okay, but here we can see that here no new is created. So it's a variable is declared ob, okay, and it will refer to the object which is passed as an argument. That means we can say the statement is like box ob equal to my box 1. Okay, and we have already seen at the beginning that when we write in this form, let me go back and show it to you. Okay, yes, when we write in this form, what happens? We have already learned this one. Okay, so a box b1 already an object is existing. So when we do box b2 equal to b1, a reference is created. Okay, so same thing is happening when we call a method. Okay, we are not using new to create a memory for b2, and we are assigning that, which is which you have seen in the clone part of our constructor, which is copying the object. Okay, but here we are simply referring. So b2 is a reference, another reference to b1. So that's why it becomes call by reference. So whatever changes that will be made to b2 will be reflected to the main object. Okay, and we can also we'll see that through b1 we can see that changes. That's why it is call by reference. Okay, so because of this feature, okay, when we pass an object, okay, that becomes call by reference. Okay, call by reference. So here is an example, and we can see that the change, because any changes will make to that object, because the object which is accepted as an argument in the call method, okay, is a reference. So whatever changes will be made to that object will be reflected to the original object which has been passed from the calling method. Okay, that means our main is the calling method is main here. Main is calling math here. You can see that it's a simple example here. For class test, the math is modifying the a value to it is doubling the a value and dividing b value by 2. Okay, whatever the initial value of a and b are there. All right. So when we pass it, okay, whatever changes will be made will be reflected to the object, okay, original object. Okay, so we can see this example. We'll run and see whether it's okay. So I think here is the program, pass object. Okay, the class name is pass object. Okay, here is the thing. No, not this one. I think call by reference. So call by reference. So here is our program. Let us run it and see how whether it is a call by reference or call by value when we pass simply an object to the method. Okay, and let's run it. Okay, so you can see that this is printed just before calling the method. Okay, and this is printed after, okay, the call is returned to the main function. So we can see that the A is doubled and your B is halved. Okay, so this is out. So that means it is reflecting to the original object. Okay, the OB is reflected when any changes are made to the O, which is a reference to the object OB. Okay, this is how the call by reference works. So anyway, so whenever you are passing an object, so be sure that any change you will make in that method, that object, the original object, is going to be affected. Returning an object. Okay, yes, we can return an object. But the reference concept remains the same. All right, so let us analyze this this particular program and understand how we know how to return an object. That's not a big thing. Simply the return type will be the class name type. Okay, so here we have a method here which is returning excuse me, returning a test. Okay, test object type. So yeah, you can see that we are creating an object inside this method, increase by 10, increment by 10. Okay, and the temp, and it is initialized with the parameters constructor by passing the value of A. Okay, because A is a data member here. Okay, so we can access the member A, whatever the value of A plus 10. Okay, so this method is creating an object itself by passing the incremented value. So whatever value is passed will be assigned to the A of the object which is created. So if A is 1, so temp, okay, will get the value 1 plus 10, that is 11. Okay, the new object will be created with the initial A value equal to 11. Then return the temp. That's it. Okay, so in the main we create first an object OB1. Okay, by passing value 2. So the A value is 2 here, right? Then another object we've just declared. Then OB2 equal to, okay, we do OB1 dot increment time. We call this method. Okay, so when we call this method, a temporary an object is created here inside this method. Okay, that is temp. Okay, whatever the A value is now, A plus S, that is 2 plus 10, 12. Okay, and this 12 is assigned to the A field of the temp object. Then temp object is returned. Okay, so then OB2 equal to temp. So OB2 is a reference to the temp object. Okay, where OB2 is referring to, OB2 is not created any memory using that. Okay, we not use any new here. Okay, so OB2 is referring to temp object. So whatever, so we can see if you print OB1, the value is 2, but when you print OB2, it is going to print 12 because it is incremented by 10. Now OB2, again let us see this one. OB2 increment by 2. We are calling with reference to the object OB2. Okay, what is the value of A in the OB2 now? That is 12. Okay, so when we call this, again another temp object is created. When this increment by 10 is called with reference to OB2, another temp object is created. Okay, with A 12 plus 10, 22. Okay, with A value equal to 22, and that object is returned. Now OB2 is assigned a reference. Now the reference of object to change. It is referring to the new temp that has been passed, whose value is equal to 22. So when you print here, you will get the value 22. Okay, Let me run and show the output. Okay, so Java return object. Alright, so first OB1 value is 2. Alright, then OB2 is created. Okay, OB2 is assigned with the temp object when we call OB1 with increment by 10. So 12 OB2 is holding. Then after second time when the increment by 10 method is called with reference to OB2. So OB2 value was 12. 12 is incremented with 10, and that is again returned at the temp object. It is again reassigned to OB2. So OB2 is referring to the new temp which value is 22. I hope I am clear about this concept. Okay, so this is how we can return an object. Okay, you have to be very careful when you are returning an object. If you are returning an old object, it will refer to the old object. But if you are returning new object, then only the values will be reflected. Otherwise, it will reflect, the values will be updated in the original one. If I will just remove this one, no, I will do return this here, and I will remove this one, this particular line, that is creating the new object, and I will simply do return this. Nothing will be updated. Okay, it will be update. Nothing will be seen. New values will be assigned to OB2. It will, even if we will get OB2 new values, it will reflect to the OB1. Okay, because no new object is created. OB1, OB2 all will refer to the new, the updated value, that is 22. Finally, at the end of this program, all OB2, OB1 will be having the same value, that is 22. Okay, then let us come to the access control. We know that the access control is the part of encapsulation feature, okay, which binds data and the method which are allowed to access, which are only allowed to access the data together. Okay, that is the members which operates on the data members. Okay, the methods which operate data members are clubbed together, okay, using the class structure, okay, and provide the feature that which method can and for outsider which method can access which part is decided by this feature. All right, so access control can prevent misuse of the data, and some aspect of access control are mostly with the inheritance or package. Okay, we'll discuss about again this access control will be revised when we discuss about inheritance and packages. So we have three access specifiers similar to the object, the C++ programming, that is public, private, protected. At this moment, we will not discuss about protected, but we'll discuss about public and private. We'll discuss about protected when we discuss inheritance. Okay, we have a separate session for that. So Java also defines a default access level. That is how the Java has a different thing. We'll see that along with the public, private, and protected, default is not directly equal to the public, private, or protected. It is little bit different from the default access specifier in the class of other object-oriented programming language. Okay, so first is when the member of class is public, then the member can be accessed by any other code. Any means anything outside the class. When the member class is specified private, then member can only be accessed by other members of its class, mostly the other member methods. Okay, when no access specifier, that means by default. Okay, if people are already you recall your C++ default. So by default in C++ S is private. Okay, so here by default it is public, but public with a restriction, public within own package. So definitely when we declare a class, it is part of one of the package. Okay, default package. Okay, so we will see that how we create our own package. Okay, and we can define classes and okay methods within that. So when there is no access specifier defined, it is public but within its own package, not outside the package. It is still not accessible outside the package. Some examples are given, public, private cases here. So let's see an example to see the access. So we have A is a default access. Okay, as I told, it is public but restricted to the package. The limit is restricted to the package. Then public, it can be accessed anywhere outside the class, okay, or inside the class. Private, only accessed by the data members only. So we are using set C to update the value of C, and get C because there is no other way to update the C. Okay, So in the main function we are creating an object ob, and ob dot a fine, because a is public within the package, b fine, but this is an error. Okay, ob dot c, and because c is a private, we cannot actually, we will get an error right here. Okay, if we do access, try to access or modify through the member methods, fine, then it will be absolutely better. Okay, so this is how we provide access specifier to the member depending upon the access control that we want to impose on the data field. Then comes to another type of member, that is called static. Okay, so it is possible to create a member that can be used by itself without reference to a specific instance or object. So they can be referred, they can be accessed, they can be modified without reference to an object. Okay, so can be directly modified. But here the Java puts the global accessibility restriction. Okay, how to access static methods. Okay, so such member, we just whenever a static member defined, we have to precede the declaration by static. So static int something or static method. Okay, main. So we know that the most common example is the main method. Okay, so static member can be accessed before any object which is created. Okay, because they may be referred without any instance of the class, so they can be created. Okay, they can be accessed. Okay, before any object is created. Okay, and without also referring to, we do not need the dot operator and the object name to refer any static member of the class. So both methods and variable can be declared. So this concept is this line is almost similar to the concept of the C++ programming language. We can create both static members or static methods and static variables. Okay, as I told, the main, we know that we can the main can be called without okay, by only the class name. Okay, we don't need an object. Okay, an object of the class we create to invoke the main. Okay, that's why, so we can be easily invoked by outside the class. Okay, so it's a static. Main is the best example of static member. Okay, instance variable declared as static are essentially global variables. Okay, so definitely, because we when try to access these variables outside the class, it has to be, they're global and they are not to be accessed through the object. That means they can be accessed without members, the normal member methods. Okay, so essentially they are global, so that they can be accessed directly. Okay, with its proper method. Okay, outside the class. Okay, we'll see the method of accessing a static member here. It is quite different from the method of accessing the static member in C++. Okay, so when an object of its class is declared, no copy of static variable is made. So static variable, as we know this property, that static member is a single copy is created for per class, not per object. Okay, static methods have some restriction. Okay, in Java, so they can only call other static methods. They must access static data. Okay, they cannot access non-static data members. They cannot refer this. Okay, this they cannot refer. They can use the keyword this or super. Super is used to refer to the parent object. In inheritance concept, it will be used. Okay, and if you need to do some computation, some task, okay, to initialize the static variable, to initialize the value, there may be static variable, we can initialize directly. We have seen in Java that we can, when we declare an object, we can initialize some constant value to that. Okay, so declare a data field, we can initialize that, like int a equal to 5, we have done that. Okay, but suppose there are static members, you want to do some computation task and initialize these variables. When there is some calculation involved, then we can declare a static block. Okay, this is unique in Java. Okay, and this static block will be executed exactly once when the class is loaded for the first time. Okay, in your program, the program is executed, so class will be loaded for the first time. So at that time it will exist just like initialization block. Okay, let's see an example here. Alright, so we have two static members. One member, when I created, I will assign the value 3. Okay, so this value is known. So, but B value depend upon some other thing, so fine, we have left B is another static member. Okay, so here is a method to just to print all the values of the value which is passed. X is passed, so X and the two static member A and B. Okay, then this is the static block. So static block will always have the keyword static with open curly braces and close curly braces. This is the way to define a static block. Then you can write all the statement that will be executed once, just like when the class is loaded and before any object is created. That is very clear. All right. So here we are printing that static block is initialized, and we are initializing B with the value or using the value of A. That's why it's a little bit computation is involved. So we can do this kind of task in your static block. Then how to access the static members outside the its own class. Okay, if you people remember who have already known about C++, we use the scope resolution operator over there with the class name, but here with the class name and dot operator can be used for accessing static method as well as static member outside the class. Let's see an example here. Okay, here is the example. We have two static member A and B which has been initialized to 42 and 99, and call me method is used to print the value of A. Okay, and in the main we can see first we are calling call me, then we are printing the value of B by accessing through the class name. So we can see that the static method, the static member method call me is accessed by a class name static demo dot call me. Similarly, the static member is accessed within the main by the class name static demo dot the field name, static demo B. So this is how we access the static members method as well as the data fields outside the class, outside its own class. Then so there will be another code related to final, that is a final keyword. Not to be confused with the beginners. Generally they confuse with the finalize. There is also another word called finally. We'll see that. So but final is a kind of constant. It will prevent the content being modified, and any accidental modification will generate an error here. So when we create a final variable, when you create a final variable, just precede the declaration with the keyword final. Alright, just with some example have been shown in the bottom, you can see that. So you have to initialize because they are going to they are just like constant. And this constant will be never be changed and will be used for different calculation purpose throughout the execution. That's why they are generally their values are initialized when the final variable are created. And the convention is used that you should their variable name should be written in uppercase, just to distinguish, highlight these are the final variables or the constant. Alright, so the keyword final can be also applied to the method, but we'll see that how when a final is applied to a method that have a different meaning. That will be discussed in the subsequent classes. Then comes to the nested class. So in Java we can nest one class within another. So the scope of the nested class is bounded by the the scope of the nested class is bounded by the scope of the enclosing class. That means the nested class always depend upon the enclosing class. It cannot stand independently. I mean to say that it does not stand. The second line says that it does not stand independently without the enclosing class. So for example, let's say class B is defined within class A. So class B is the inner class, the nested class, and A is the enclosing class. We generally call that A is the enclosing class. So in this case, B cannot stand independently. Whenever we refer outside, B cannot stand independent. It stands with the A only. Alright. Now the rule is that in a nested class can access to all the member, including private member of the enclosing class. Okay, that means B can access all the data member including private member of the class A. However, the enclosing class doesn't have access to the nested class. That means A cannot access the members of the, okay, especially the members which are declared within the B cannot have the access to the member of the class B to the nested class. Nested class can access the enclosing class member. Okay, it is possible to declare a nested class that is local to a block. Okay, yes. So suppose you want to declare a class within a particular block, that is also possible. Now there is a chance we can do a static and non-static inner class. Okay, the nested class, inner class, but static inner class is hardly used, because you know that we because the static members can be accessed. Okay, member can be they can access. This point is that it must the static member can access the class. Okay, through the class member of the outside class. Okay, let us take that example. Okay, we know that A is, let's say A is non-static and B is static. Okay, so what happens when because B the static members can be accessed, but what happens when B try to access the member of the A, class A, the enclosing class. So in that you have to create an object. Okay, so it have to refer through an object. Okay, all the member of the class, it has to refer through an object. That's why it is a problem. It is because of the restriction. Okay, the static nested class is hardly used. Okay, so inner class is generally a non-static class. Okay, so and access to all the variables of the method from its outer class and may refer them to directly in the same name. Okay, no reference is required. Okay, so that's the point. Let's see an example here. It will be more clear. So we have the enclosing class, outer class, excuse me, and there is only one member, outer X, which is initialized to 100, and we have a method test, okay, which create an object of the nested class, which is inner. The name is inner here. Okay, and it invoke the method which is defined in the manner that is display. Okay, using the object of that. All right, fine. Then comes to the inner class. Okay, the nested class. We have defined the method display to display outer X. Okay, as we defined that any inner class can access the or the nested class can access all the member of the enclosing class. So the outer class, so it can access out. So it is printing the value of outer X in the display method. Okay, so coming to main creates an object of outer. Okay, so let's say it is a small outer and outer dot test. When test is invoked, it creates an object of the inner. Okay, and going to display the value of the outer X, that is 100. This is how it works. All right. However, what will the output here? Okay, here we see that we created another method show y. Okay, so y. Okay, and we are trying to print the value y directly, and where we have created this y as a member of the inner class or nested class. Okay, so if you can, everybody must have guessed that this will lead to an error, because the method show y is a member of, okay, outer class. Okay, so any outer class doesn't have access to, okay, direct access to the member of the inner class. Okay, inner class can do it the access, but not the reverse one. Okay, so this will lead an error. We cannot access y right here because y is a member of inner class. Okay, so this is how when we nest one class within another, you have to, these restrictions are applied. So with this with this we end this session of discussion of the overview of Java classes and object. Okay, and that's all for today. Thank you very much.